Hi, I'm Zeke with the Sonoran Desert Institute, and here at SDI, we're extremely proud to be sponsors of the Hickok45 channel. You may be asking yourself, well, what is SDI? SDI is an affordable, fully accredited distance learning education program. We have an emphasis in gunsmithing and firearms technology. If you decide to become a gunsmith, you'll need to learn proper gunsmithing techniques, and while some people will use an apprenticeship program to gain these techniques, a formal education will ensure an organized, more comprehensive learning environment. But when you choose a gunsmithing school, it's still kind of difficult. So it's very important that you choose a gunsmithing school that meet the following criteria. First, look for a nationally or regionally accredited program. And whether distance learning online or through a brick and mortar ground program, a gunsmithing program should always have a hands-on element. And finally, make sure you look for a school with high student satisfaction. Find reviews online, check out its Facebook or other social media, or get on the same social media sites, find some alumni, and ask to speak with them about their experience. And while we're not at SDI today, I do have some of the firearms I've learned to work on and build myself through the SDI program. So let's go take a look at them. Okay, maybe not. We'll just get seriously. Can I not get a chair that fits me? I'm a big guy, dude. So I guess back to what we were originally talking about. Above all else, find the school that's right for you. It's not always going to be the distance education programs or the brick and mortar ground schools that are for everybody. Just make sure you do your research on multiple options before you make that decision. But if you want more information on our gunsmithing school, just go to www.sdi.edu or call us at 1-800-336-8939.
All right, here we are back on the radio. Dad's over there, and who's that guy in the pink shirt?
I'm glad you said pink shirt. If you're watching this in video, don't adjust the color. It is a pink shirt. I'm sorry.
Man.
Yeah.
It's not salmon. It's not salmon color.
No, it's pink.
It's pink. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You guys know who he is, right? TN Outdoors 9. one of our fellow YouTube pioneers of the early days.
The early days. If I could say something, can I say something?
Yeah, I guess. Okay.
I'll say something. I mean, it's great to be here in the studio, and
I thought you meant alive. It's great.
Oh yeah, well that too. But it's great to be here, sitting here with Hickok45 and the lead guitarist for Maroon 5.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that about me, but
Are you ever mistaken for James Valentine?
I'm not sure who that is, but yes, often. No,
Okay.
No, who is that?
He's the lead guitarist for Maroon 5.
Oh, I don't know. I don't. Really
you
listen
look
to,
like him.
Oh, I don't really listen to them.
You're
so-
probably maybe 8-10 inches taller than him, but you favor each other.
Oh, okay.
I don't favor anyone, so.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Oh,
I've never heard
he
of
does.
I've never heard of Maroon 5, but I know every time I go into a Subway, I see you up on a poster. Yeah. People think that. See, I busted you. Now everybody knows that's you.
You did that once. You sent me a text with a photo of Jared, and
Yeah.
you said something about you ran into me at Subway.
I did. I've always thought that guy looks like you, or is it you look like him?
No, it was such a compliment. No, it really wasn't.
Yeah.
No.
You're a cross between the Subway guy and Neil Cavuto off of Hawks.
Oh, I get that
That's true.
also.
That's true. He does look like Neil
Yeah, I get
Cavuto.
that
I didn't
also.
know that.
I appreciate that.
If they somehow had a baby,
Oh man.
That's just wrong.
yeah, that idea will definitely knock you down.
Good.
Oh, that was an interesting segue. Speaking of knock you down, so what do you think about knockdown power? What is the handgun caliber that has knockdown power? That when you shoot someone, they knock down.
They go flying through a window.
Yeah, which one does that?
Oh, it has to be the 45 ACP. That is the hammer of Thor.
Yep.
45
yeah.
ACP.
Yeah.
That's right.
No,
you
but
shoot somebody in the hand, and you're right. They
Well,
go down.
it even knocks down people that are near the person.
Yeah,
that
in the
you're
next
shooting.
room. Yeah.
right, it's within a 10-foot radius, I believe.
Right.
Now, knockdown power is, I don't want to say it's a myth. You'll find a lot of threads on the internet and maybe some videos that say knockdown power is a myth, and to some extent it is. Literally, you mentioned this just a couple of days ago. I was surfing YouTube and ran across some of the Dirty Harry clips. And you remember the scene in the original Dirty Harry where the serial killer, he's trying to capture blow him away or whatever. He's running across the football field. You remember that scene?
I remember everything from that movie.
Where the guy is in the middle of the football field. He's about 40 yards away.
Yeah.
And Dirty Harry takes the 44 and with one hand, with really not even aiming, obviously, this is Hollywood, takes the shot and the guy does a backflip in the air.
Yeah.
Well, then when they get on the close-up part of that scene, you see he got hit in the leg with the 44 yards. Now, is that going to spin somebody around? I don't know. But then in the last scene of the movie, where he's on that pier, and he's holding that kid hostage.
Oh, yeah.
He shoots him in the shoulder with the 44 Magnum at what looks like 20, 30 feet, 40 feet maybe. And then the guy, almost flips off into the water. And then when he does shoot him again for the last time, the guy just literally flies in the air and lands in the water. I mean, that's where people get this knockdown power thing. I mean, somebody at some point had to come up with the phrase knockdown power.
That's right. Well, it seems to me cowboy movies and everything else where someone gets literally knocked down when they're shot.
Well, I mean, that's a phrase that comes into play when people are looking at ammo. What's the knockdown power?
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, does it mean energy? Does it mean literally knocking somebody down? I mean,
and is it a metaphor that people actually know that it doesn't actually knock people down, but they just mean like what would be, if it was a real thing, what would actually be the closest to that,
What would be the result, the physical results of it. But giving people the benefit of the doubt, maybe that's what some people are
right. But I think a lot of people actually do believe that there's a certain round, like hunters talk about certain rounds, like dropping a deer. Like there's people who think that there's certain calibers of handguns that knock people down, like one shot, boom, the Mike Tyson style, knockout.
And of course, it depends on like the scene you referenced where the guy's running, the low life sicko is running across the football field. Well, you did hit him in the knee, didn't he? The leg. Well, if you're running or a 44 Magnum round hits you in the bone, in the knee or leg, well, you probably would go down. Very likely you could do a somersault and you'd go down. But
that part of the scene on the football field may have been realistic. I mean, you think about when you're shooting steel plates with a 44 at 50, 60, 70 yards, you put a pretty good spin on those.
It could shatter, literally shatter the bone, in your knee or something, but it's going to be hard to keep running. Yeah.
I've got 12-inch plates. They weigh about 13 pounds, AR-500 steel. I'll hit that with a 45 ACP, 5-inch barrel at, 40, 50 yards. It flips them around pretty good.
Yeah.
But that last scene where he's literally in the air, he stands up to pick up the pistol, and then he gets shot, and he's like, he flies, 8, 10 feet through the air and lands back in the water.
Plus with a 44 Magnum, as we all know, the faster the bullet is like throwing something really fast through a sheet of paper. It just goes through it, and the paper doesn't necessarily move.
That's true. It doesn't disturb the actual thing that's getting hit as much.
And that shot on him, it probably would have just gone through him and he would have just fallen down dead.
That's why really, in all seriousness, even though it doesn't, the closest caliber that could have some kind of knockdown power would have to be would be the 45 because it's the slowest and biggest. It still doesn't. But based on that principle, I mean, that's what it would take. If you talked about a caliber that actually would knock someone down, really probably what that would take would be something the size of like a shotgun slug.
Moving slow.
That's moving at like 500 feet per second. That would probably knock someone down, right? Like a 1 ounce piece of lead moving at around 500 feet per second.
The more energy that's expended in the target and not on the other side of the target, the more effect it's going to have. But our resident expert, tnoutdoors9 here, has done a lot of ballistics.
Yeah, so what do you think?
So let's let him elaborate and shut up.
I think it's a myth. I mean, a lot of people are going to disagree with that. What has perpetuated this, and I say perpetuated, I've been reading and studying about ammo since probably, on a pretty religious basis, since probably...
kindergarten.
Yeah, which was, 12 years ago. So probably since the late 90s when I really started getting into handguns and looking at carry ammo and so forth. I mean, I've had an interest in ballistics since I was in my 20s, and that was a long time ago. And that was when I was shooting 22 shorts from a pistol into a pipe that was full of mud. And I would dig it out. And just I could see I just want to see the rifling. I wasn't so much interested in penetration or expansion or what it was. I wanted to see the rifling. Isn't that weird?
No, that's cool.
That's kind of how I got started.
Primitive ballistics gel.
Yeah. I mean, this was way back. But even today, I can pick up articles in a gun magazine from a year ago, 2 years ago, and someone will say the 45, when they're comparing, the infamous 9mm versus 45 comparison. They say, oh, the 45 known for its knockdown power. It's almost as if that's a cut and paste phrase.
Yeah.
Anyone writing about ballistics in a gun magazine or on the forum or whatnot, they quote the exact same thing. You see the same phrase over and over again. You look at handguns, 9mm average energy, and I guess that's how people equate knockdown power as energy. Look at it, 340, 350 foot-pounds of energy, 124 plus P at 1,200 feet per second. It's about 400 foot-pounds. 44 Magnum, you're getting up into 600, maybe even 700. 45, you're in the 400, 450 range. Then you compare that to 223. 223, 55 grain at 3,200 feet per second is 1,200 some odd foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So everybody says, handguns are weak. It's what you grab to get to your fighting gun, which is your rifle or shotgun. And they're convenient, obviously. So you're talking a fraction of muzzle energy, and I think that's where people get into the knockdown power. And you look at knockdown power, here's a baseball analogy. A baseball weighs 5 1/4 ounces. I thought it weighed more than that, but it weighs 5 1/4 ounces. 90 miles per hour when it crosses the plate, which is when it's in the range and when it's going to hit a batter. So a baseball at 90 miles an hour equates to 132 feet per second. That's, you think, pellet guns are faster.
Right.
So somebody says knockdown power. If I get hit with a 5 1/4 ounce baseball at 90 miles per hour, I'm going down.
Yeah.
So, but that's 17, it's either 17 or 18 foot-pounds of energy. If I did my math right, it's 17 or 18 foot-pounds of energy. When a 90-mile-per-hour baseball hits you in the the side or knocks you down on the ground.
But that's
there's just that analogy works, but then again it doesn't.
Well, it's a great point though, because the big difference there is, without thinking too much about it, I don't think about anything too much, but it's like you get hit with a fist that knocks you down. It's going even slower.
Exactly.
It's the size of it, and every ounce of the energy is being expended on your chest if someone hits you with a baseball. So, that would hurt, and it's like someone picks up a beer can, a Coke can, and slings it at you really hard, even going half the speed of that baseball. It literally could knock you down, just partly the pain of it, your reaction to it, and all that kind of, but it's all being expended right there where it hits, whereas as most everybody knows and says, and we repeat it all the time, I guess, that basically what handgun bullets do, rounds do, is they punch holes.
Exactly.
They cause you to leak.
Right.
Whereas if you get up into the rifle calibers, like you say, some of the bigger rifles, even 223, 5.56, 308, 30-06, all those, then you get into some serious foot poundage of energy, and with the right bullets, man, they hit so hard, and with such impact that then you get into maybe some real knockdown power, perhaps,
Even with them, though, like you'll hear vets all the time. That's what I thought was interesting. You're explaining the difference between 223, 5.56, and even 44 Magnum, and how dramatically different they were in terms of energy. Still, people complain about the 5.56 not being effective in combat. How people will get hit several times. You hear vets talk about it all the time. Shoot them 3-4 times and they're not down and they're still fighting back. And
when we say knockdown or taking someone down, it's really, we're talking about their reation to being shot.
Right. It depends on the person.
Because it doesn't knock the shooter down, so it shouldn't knock down the shootee. You get right down to it on basic level.
That gets into a physics equation where you look at shooting say a 308, where you're looking at 175 grain bullet, 175 grain bullet at 2,700 feet per second. You're getting way more muzzle energy than you would a 223. You get more muzzle energy out of a 7.62 39 full metal jacket. It's around 1,450 foot-pounds.
Yeah.
I think foot-pounds ties in with the knockdown power theory. So, what does knockdown power mean? Does that mean taking someone out of the fight? Does it mean taking them out of the world? Does it mean putting them on their knees? And like you said, you hear a lot of stories from the sandbox, so to speak, of people saying, we hit this guy 6 times in the chest, upper center mass with 5.56. But as you know, there's all different types of 5.56 ammo,
Right.
and some are more effective than others. And they could be referring to the infamous 62 grain green tip.
That really just punches holes.
Right. I mean,
Right.
it's really basically shooting a nail through someone.
So it's where the person's hit. I know these are gross things to talk about, but it's still a topic worthy of discussion. Is the 22 short? If you pop somebody in the eyeball, it's going to have some serious knockdown power.
Yeah,
They're going down
that's
immediately.
Exactly. I mean, does that if someone's saying knockdown power is putting someone on the ground, taking them out of the fight, separating them from their weapon, stopping the aggression, all those things, which is really what you hope to
Yeah.
accomplish if you find yourself, unfortunately, in a self-defense scenario.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't think it really means anything. And again, there'll be a lot of people that will disagree with that, but it's that terminology and that concept, whether it's false or not, or baseless or not, that sells ammo. And it, I think, helps people determine what caliber they're going to carry for their handgun. Somebody says, hey, I've read a lot of good things about the 45 ACP and its history and its knockdown power.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the 45 ACP platform. Hey, that's great if it works for you. If you find a handgun that you're comfortable with, you're proficient with it. That's really where it comes back to.
And it is a good cartridge, for example.
I think it's an awesome cartridge.
It's just that it gets overrated, I think, because a pistol round, again, it's just going to cause someone to leak mainly. Then depending on where you hit, if you hit somebody in a forward with a 9mm or a 380 or a 45, you're going to get about the same reaction. If you hit somebody in the arm with a 45 or a 9, you're going to get about the same reaction. And I always come back to this. If someone thinks that I'm going to be killed because I'm carrying a 9mm or something and whatever bullet, a question I would like to ask them if I'm still alive is, okay, where exactly, or let's say the bad guy was about to kill me and I shot him, I don't know, in the right lung or wherever I shot him. Okay, that 9mm didn't get the job done, you're saying. Okay, maybe I did end up on the other side of the grass because my 9mm didn't do the job as he was about to take me out. Okay, what exactly different was that 40 caliber or that 45 going to do? Let's say it's the same bullet, it's a gold dot or whatever it is, but that hit exactly the same place. Just having that little bit of extra diameter. What exactly was that 45 going to do, or that 40, that the 9mm Hydroshock or HST or whatever it is did not do, that would have stopped that attacker in his tracks, and I'd still be alive? I kind of like to think of it like that,
Not much of a chance.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, one thing too to think about is because I do think there's probably some advantages of the 45, maybe just because it's bigger and it's big and slow.
It's bigger and heavier.
Big and slow is, I think, probably a good thing for defense. But if you think about it this way, for example, like a 9mm, it's basically like it's 35 caliber basically, right? Mm-hmm. So 2 9mm, well, yeah,
Something like that.
something like that. 2 9mm essentially. Okay, let me do some quick math here. 2 9mm is like a 70 caliber bullet, right? Is my math correct?
Yeah.
Which is a shotgun slug.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
It's a 12 gauge slug.
So most people, regardless of what skill level you're at, it doesn't matter, beginner or advanced, is probably going to be able to get 2 9mm rounds on target almost as fast as they could get, one. I mean, you're going to be able to get 2 9mm rounds on target a lot faster than you could 2 45. That's for sure.
You're going to get more, whatever the number is, you're going to get more 9s probably on target more accurately.
Right. So you might actually have more effect, if you actually total it all up.
And we're just, there'll be people who jump all over the discussion, of course, which is fine. But yeah, we're just kind of talking, but these are the kinds of things that I think that need to be discussed like that.
Well, because people are so
different
close
ways to look at it.
Yeah, because people are so close-minded about it. They're like, it has to be this, it has to be that. No, know it's this because I saw this one example, you know.
Oh, I know.
And that's what kills me about
Anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
And old guys like me are the worst.
They really
You've
are.
been in a gun shop
I don't
or
know.
anywhere. And you've never been in a gun
No,
shop.
I mean, no, I've been in a gun
Really,
shop. I've been
even military guys, you know, and you hate to, you know, I'm
Yeah.
not going to jump on some military guy's back, some old guy, maybe he fought World War II.
But
or
again-
Korea, and they go, oh, all you need, buddy, is a 45. 45 will take them down every time.
Because they've had one experience.
Because
Yeah.
they saw
Or
somebody
two or
go
three.
down or whatever.
Well, so you'll hear the other side. I mean, I don't know that it could be limited to age demographic with regard
No,
to
it's
someone's
not, no. perception
of. I'm not going to try. I'm trying not to use stopping power. I think we left that behind.
Yeah.
Okay, we left that behind. But you talk about there will be some folks who say fought in World War II or the Korean War, or even the Vietnam War with the 45. And they're going to say, "Oh yeah, that's you know." You hear all types of comments, and these are the guys who will say, "Why did the U.S. military ever go to 9mm?"
Yeah.
You know, we are appeasing NATO and our European allies, and that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of people will say that. Then you'll have a lot of guys who have served in the Middle East in the last 20 years now, and you'll hear all different types of stories about the 9mm. Which you're talking 124 grain full metal jacket,
Full metal
at
jacket.
plus P velocity, so
Yeah.
to speak. So, I mean, you might get a lot of pass throughs, but you have the energy just isn't retained. Here I go about energy again. Energy just isn't retained as much as it would be, say, with a hollow point, which
Yeah.
obviously you're not going to use
Yeah.
in warfare. But there are a lot of guys that will come back and say, yeah, the 9mm has served us well in a Beretta platform, a longer barrel to get that velocity. Some others say, no, we really want to go back to the 45. And you hear people talk about maybe using a truncated cone full metal jacket 40.
Yeah.
For military service, which I don't think is a terribly bad idea.
No.
So
At least you got a flat, for surface.
yeah, I mean,
on
there's
those.
there's going to be more tissue disruption. I guess is a politically correct way of saying it.
Yeah.
There's going to be more tissue disruption with a truncated cone full metal jacket than there would be a round nose,
And then,
regardless of caliber, even 380.
that's right.
They need to just go back. Honestly, they just need to go back to the 1911. I mean, just keep it simple. You know what I mean? Just keep it simple.
Everybody
Like, I
happy.
mean, how?
Well, they did at that discussion.
Well, actually, some units are, the ones
Yeah,
who
the
actually,
Marines.
and that's the other thing. Generally, the rifle is what they depend on in the military.
Right. The
I was
handgun
not in
is-
the military, so the handgun comes into play, and probably lots of times it's unusual, desperate situations or whatever, and then all kinds of stories arise from that, and it's a close encounter. Probably, and then someone didn't go down immediately when they really needed to because it was at handgun distances and all this going on, and so it's exaggerated when
Yeah.
it doesn't stop somebody.
And the guys that-
there's all kinds of anecdotal evidence, so you can
Yeah.
read. I've read over the years how people have been hit with shotgun slugs in the chest and it didn't go down.
Right.
So anecdotal evidence, just evidence.
It's a
doesn't mean
crapshoot.
much,
No, Another thing too, I think I mentioned this on one of my other shows. You have to be careful about trusting too much what some veteran says sometimes because, here's an example I like to use. Okay, none of us, as far as I know, have ever flown a plane before, right? But if we
Last Saturday.
Did you?
flew a plane.
Oh, I was in a plane.
Oh, no, flown a plane. Flown a plane. All right, so if we talk to someone who has flown a plane, they've flown a plane just one time, let's say. They have flown a plane. They have way more experience than we could ever imagine, right? They've flown a plane. You know what I mean? So they know a lot. But they really don't know that much either because they've only flown a plane one time, let's say. Okay, well, the thing is about some guy, let's say there's a veteran who's been in like a couple of shootouts, let's say. He's killed some people. He's been in shootings. So compared to us, he knows way more than we do. But he doesn't really know either because you're talking about a situation that's probably different almost every single time. You could probably take a sampling of like 1,000 shootings and there would be something different about all of them.
Well, and especially with a handgun, a military
Especially.
gun. How many people in military have had extensive experience defending themselves with 3 or 4 different caliber handguns?
Right.
That's the thing about this whole business and that's one reason it's like religion or something. That's why we all like to argue about it because it's hard to prove one way or the other. You would have to have somebody attacking you, let's say about every morning when you got up. Let's see. This
Basically.
week I'm going to use my 9mm, and I'll use Hydra Shocks this week, and I'll use Gold Dot next week.
They have to be the same size.
Yeah, for this month, there's going to be somebody coming through that window, the same place exactly, and I'm going to shoot them in exactly the same place under the same circumstances and see how they react every week.
It has to be almost the same person. Different people would react differently.
Right.
You know, some people would just go full warrior on you. And it doesn't matter how many times you shoot them, they're just going to kill you until you make them stop. And the other people will be like, oh my God, I've been shot. And they're going to rethink their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you need a whole month of using 9mm on a variety of people coming through that same window. And then the next month, every day, you use a 40 on that same 30 different people, you know?
Yeah.
And then a 45 before you even could start making some valid generalizations.
Which is why it kills me. You'll see a guy on the internet every now and then, and you'll see one of these discussions, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, I was in Iraq. I shot somebody. I'll tell you how it is." It's like, okay,
that's how it was that time. That was your perception.
Yeah, you've had an experience that I haven't had and can't relate to, but you still don't know. Sorry, you know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, not taking it away from someone.
No, I'm not taking it away from the experience. They know more than me because they have one example, but they still don't. As far as you look at the whole grand scheme of that topic, they still don't know necessarily that much more than anybody else, and nobody knows. Because if combat experience was enough to figure it out, then we'd know the answer.
Right.
You know, but there's no one in existence that we know of who has been in enough shootings to actually be able to sit down and go, nope, it's this is the round that works. This is the type of tactic that needs to be used. Okay, it's been figured out. Let's just do that.
Well, there is one guy, and you probably, Tommy, are familiar with Jim Cirillo.
Yeah, he's
New York Steakhouse.
He was New York City Police Department. I think he passed a few years ago.
Yeah,
but,
I believe he had more experience than most.
I don't know. Yeah,
he like what, a dozen shootouts or something.
Oh, I think it was more than that.
I mean, real shootouts in the market.
But someone like that, though,
So at least he's got enough to make some generalizations.
Yeah, or like there's probably like some Navy SEALs, some special ops guys out there.
No, they could tell you something.
If they've been on several operations where they've done very similar things, they could probably give you a pretty good idea for sure.
Yeah, there's a gentleman, I'm not going to obviously mention his name or even really where he is located geographically in the U.S., but you're both kind of hitting around what's part of this big pool of data, and that is street credentials or battlefield credentials.
Experience.
Whether it's coming from someone in infantry who shot someone, or someone in law enforcement who shot someone, or a medic, for example, in the battlefield.
Or maybe a coroner.
A coroner or a physician or whatnot. And it's just all part of the big pool of data that we have to reference. But even when we look at that, which is street credentials, the amateurish type test that I'm putting out there, and others, you're looking at professional tests. And one reason why I started doing this with Wetpack in 2009, well, it's been 6 years now, because I just really wasn't finding enough of that piece of the pie, which was, ballistic test, wasn't finding it online. You would see references to it in blogs, and then before we had the internet, we would all see readings about it in magazines. Now it's so convenient to get to tap into this information, and then I work in a field which is medical research. So by virtue of what I do in publishing and marketing and sales, I have access to an immense amount of resources that are coming from the medical field on anatomy and incapacitation, and that's a word that's very important in all of this is incapacitation.
So that's the key word, the goal.
I mean,
that's what we mean by stopping power.
That's stopping power, right? Let's start a campaign. We'll start printing up some bumper stickers. Stopping power equals incapacitation.
Call it the incapacitation factor. It's IF from now on.
I mean, in a self-defense scenario, in a battlefield scenario, you want to accomplish that objective as quickly as possible. And it's all this data. It's shot placement, it's caliber, it's penetration, expansion, I think to some degree, although I'm more of a penetration proponent than I am expansion.
Is that a fact?
That is a fact.
Okay.
But you get...
No, see, here you go. You got me, man, you got me in the corner here. I'm not going to say you trapped me. I can't not say that's a fact. I cannot say that's a fact. But by virtue of the last 4 years, starting to get more into some type of gel simulation or representation. I rarely have used 10% ordnance gel, which is the holy grail. I've used, different simulants and so forth, but the results are consistent with what I've seen from professional, quote unquote, professional tests with 10% ordnance gel. So I have been seeking that type of data because you just really don't see the ammo makers, and we're talking the big ammo companies. You really don't see them, for whatever reason, putting that information in the public realm. Now, there's more now than there used to be, because you can go to any of the major manufacturers' websites, and they will say, well, our ammo satisfy the FBI test criteria, which is another point of discussion. People agree and disagree with, for whatever reason. So you see more of that. How did it do in bear gel or with heavy cloth denim? How did this bullet do with sheetrock or wallboard or metal or glass, those types of things? And that, obviously, I think that's set up more for the law enforcement community. They're more likely to encounter those types of scenarios than the three of us are, you would think. But I guess what I'm getting to is that by virtue of doing all these things I have for the last 4, 5, 6 years, I've had folks in the law enforcement community. I've had forensics specialists, who I consider specialists. I've had a lot of people who we all know and would recognize their name. I'm not going to mention them, but they have reached out to me and said, hey, I like what you're doing, and this is somewhat realistic with what we see on the street. I've talked to law enforcement folks who have been in 12, 14, 15 gun battles, and they have killed people or they've wounded people, and they've survived every single one of them. And they have told me stories, not so much about what ammo they were using or what platform, which is what we all debate on these forums, is it not? That's where we spend most of our time. Well, this caliber sucks. Or you shouldn't use a Glock. You should use an XDS, or you should use a Colt, or whatever.
It's like
we argue about some of the stupidest things for a topic that is very important.
Yes.
And he's telling me it comes down to training and tactics, shot placement, luck, and incapacitation time, which all those factors lead to incapacitation time. He said, if I can stop, and this was this law enforcement officer, he said, if I can stop a threat in 2-3 seconds with 1-2 shots, obviously that's our objective. And he said that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
I've heard of scenarios from other law enforcement folks where an assailant, someone, not the subject, they were caught doing all this, and they were going for the suicide by cop. Unbelievably, they took a full magazine of 40 caliber, I think 165 grain of something, from a Glock 22. So you're talking 15, 16 rounds.
See, that's scary.
Most of those, and the other thing is, somebody says, where did those hit? Most of those were upper center mass or center mass, and maybe a few in the pelvic region. They survived.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you talk about people living with shotgun slugs. I mean, a 12 gauge Foster slug, if it hits the right type of material, it's going to splinter into 3 pieces. I mean, that's devastating.
Well, I know. That's why you've got to be prepared for there to be, and that's something that I think we probably all forget, that, we hear stories about people being shot and not realizing it. The adrenaline's up, and they don't even, after the altercation or whatever, maybe it's a cop or whoever, after this shooting or this incident, they look down and they're bleeding. They've got a hole. You don't necessarily get a reaction, like we're talking about, stopping power, quote unquote. Someone's about to get you. We've all seen the movies, and that's a fear that I would have if somebody was trying to kill me and I took a shot. Subconsciously, I'm expecting them to react. They might not react at all, and I just think, so you've got to be prepared to continue.
You can't be looking for a reaction. I wouldn't think.
Right. I mean, that's a good point. You're looking for a reaction that hostilities have ceased. They've been separated from their weapon. They're no longer advancing towards you. Those types of things.
Am I shooting blanks or what?
Right. You're thinking, have I even connected? Because you can't. I mean, with handgun rounds, the movies portray this massive explosion of blood. And that doesn't necessarily
happen. And like you were mentioning, the physicians, forensics people, medical examiners, and you got to always be careful too with as we all know, reading what they say if they're talking about whether or not the subject, the felon, whatever, the assailant died or not. I hear people. Quoting some forensic guy, say, well, he says this guy, he knows his stuff, and he said the 22 has killed more people than anything else, and what a 22 will do. All that's true.
Yeah,
we don't care whether they die or not.
Yeah, that doesn't take into account assassinations and stuff.
Yeah, we want to stop them.
Yeah.
You know, the guy might kill me. I might shoot him, and then he still kills me. It's irrelevant whether he dies or not. I want to stop him. You know, that's what we're all looking at.
I remember whenever I was in school for criminal justice, I remember we learned that like by far the number one cause of death, you know, after like of people who have been shot, the number one thing that kills them is just blood loss.
Right.
That's the number one thing. Is blood loss.
I don't mean
What?
Yeah, is that a joke?
No, it's not a joke. There's lots of ways to die. I mean, you can get shot in the brain, the heart.
That's true.
So it's not. So it's like it's not that they died right then from the shooting. It's just that they eventually bled out and died.
Bled out, I know.
Yeah, which
it just sounded a little bit like most people die from their heart stopping, or that kind of thing. But yeah, I know what you meant.
Yeah. I mean, I guess eventually everyone dies from blood loss. Maybe. I don't know.
I learned something tonight. How about that? Thanks, John. That's awesome.
No, it almost sounded like a joke, but yeah, I know what you mean.
But what I'm saying is they only died because they didn't get to the hospital in time. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying.
They bled out.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so then you get into categorizing. I'm going to mention it one last time. Stopping power.
Yeah.
You get into categorizing. What was it? Okay, let's get beyond the platform of handgun that you use. Let's get beyond caliber. Let's get beyond bullet weight. Let's get beyond velocity, energy, penetration, expansion. Okay, when the threat ceases, no one that I've heard of is tracking or compiling data to the degree we think we would like to see it. That ballistic freaks such as myself, what was it that caused that person to stop? They're not going to be interviewed, at the hospital or in the police car or in the ambulance saying, well, sir, why did you cease your aggressions? You took 2 shots to the chest, you had a perforated lung, a collapsed lung, and you lost 2 pints of blood. But you're still kicking. So what kept you going, or what do you think stopped? And the guy says, well, it was a 9mm, so I figured I could make it,
Yeah.
I thought you'd keep charging.
Do you realize you just got shot with a .22? Oh, really? So obviously, that doesn't happen.
Well, something
depends on the circumstance too. Like what was the whole reason that person was engaged in that conflict with you in the first place?
Right.
If it's only because they wanted to steal something from you, and it turned
how motivated were they?
Yeah, it depends on.
That's a good point too.
Depends on the
what
stakes.
is their level?
Yeah, it just depends on the stakes. I mean, if a guy maybe broke into your house, didn't know you were there, was just trying to steal some stuff. And then all of a sudden there you are, and he's like, "Oh, this guy's gonna kill me!" Like, he's wanting to get away. Also, that's the thing. A lot of those cases. I mean, this idea that there's a bunch of people out there who are just looking for innocent people to kill is not that realistic. There are some, of course, serial killers and stuff.
And almost nothing's going to stop them. They're going to keep coming at
but
you.
they prey on like really weak people, and they look around for people who they know aren't armed. But typically, if you get into a shooting with someone, it's like they say about bumblebees. Like in a lot of cases, they should be as scared as you are because
they want to get out of there.
Right. So that's another thing is you might stop them mentally before you ever stop them physically, just by showing that you have a gun, and then that you're willing to actually shoot them, and you do, and then so there's a lot of stages there where
and that would cover the highest percentage of those situations.
Yeah.
Back to the ballistic gel, and you're the ballistics guy here with gel and all that. You've seen I guess it's an FBI test picture where it's gone around the internet where there's, and I know I've shared it, I've looked at it, and it shows, I guess it's 389, 40, and 45 maybe, the ballistic gel from the side. And I'm not sure what the bullet is. It's not an ad for a particular bullet, I don't think.
No, it never really says.
But it's showing that each one, penetrating, I think, deeply enough and expanding and creating a pretty scary wound channel. You've seen that. And just to illustrate that there's really not that much difference.
Yeah, it's showing a couple of things. It's showing the depth of penetration, which I know exactly what image you're talking about. It's been posted in internet forums ever since the beginning of internet forums. And it shows the penetration generally coming in at least 10 inches. I'm going to say that's with the 380. You're right. It doesn't specify what who the manufacturer was, the brand, weight, anything like that. It shows that generally most will meet that 12-inch FBI minimum. And again, that's a whole topic of debate. Some folks feel like that's too much. They say, well, I'm only 9 inches thick. Why would you want 12 inches of penetration as a minimum? Because then you're going to have over penetration, and you could harm an innocent bystander or something like that. That's a whole nother debate.
Of course, the body's going to be different than gel.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking gel is the 10% Ordnance gel is effectively pig fat or pig muscle. I mean, it's kind of a mix of all that. The sim test that I used for a number of years, which I've recently just gotten rid of that. I no longer really do anything with it, and I've kind of cut it up into small pieces and threw it all over the yard as sort of a memorial. So, catching some possums, eating it, nibbling on it, the neighbor's cat, things like that. But that product was really close to ballistic gel the way I had it calibrated, and it has animal byproduct in it. I don't know from what end of the animal the byproduct came out of, but it did have animal byproduct, which is what 10% Ordnance gel is. And the clear gel is synthetic, and it has different properties. One other, and where I was going with this is one other aspect of that image you're talking about. It shows the permanent cavitation, which, talking to people, I've had that, experience, talking to people who've done this, they're not seeing that permanent cavity. But with all these ballistic gel tests, whether it's 10% Ordnance gel or sim test or clear gel or whatnot, consistently, whether it's 380, 9mm, 40, 357 SIG, or 45 ACP, we're talking the primary semi-automatic service calibers that people like us are going to carry. And we might carry one caliber as a primary and another caliber as a backup. I won't get into that. But permanent cavitation, generally I'm seeing in these tests, it's the cavities, the biggest piece of the cavity runs maybe from 2 inches to 6 or 7 inches deep and about 1 inch in diameter. And that has been pretty consistent regardless of caliber, regardless of bullet weight. I will say that the heavier and faster a bullet, you generally have more disruption.
Makes sense.
And then generally the heavier a bullet, regardless of caliber, the more penetration. 9mm, as much as some people don't like the 147 grain 9mm, on average I would get 14 and a half, 14 and 3/4 inches penetration, which to me is great. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is 14 to 16 inches. That's my personal preference there. But 9mm, typically 14, 14 and a half, 147s. Yeah. Some of the 124 plus P, 12 to 14 inches. So those expand more, they penetrate less. And that's kind of a rule.
Yeah.
But the more expansion you get because of higher velocity, the less penetration you get. And then you've got all these what I call exotic ammo types.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other ballgame right there.
But the main point there is there's not, by the time they expand, you get the good expansion from good bullets. These modern bullets are amazing. There's just not that much difference.
No, there's
in terms of making somebody leak, because that's all you can really count on with a handgun, unless you get some incredible shot placement.
Right, incredible shot placement would be the central nervous system, the CNS, which is a brain or head shot, which is not that likely, and a lot of folks are trained not really to shoot for that, because in a self-defense scenario, there's movement, you're moving or trying to or need to.
The bullets glance off of the skull. That happens.
That happens a lot, and you'll hear stories. Oh, yeah, that happens a lot with 45 or 40 more than it does 9mm, because 9mm for whatever reason, because it just has better penetration capabilities. They all basically penetrate the same. Yeah. Some more than others. It comes down to bullet construction and velocity. And I've been able to see a lot of that firsthand by just cutting these things apart, looking at how they work, understanding what they're made of. I mean,
at least there's not enough. I mean, there's a little difference. Obviously, bigger is better, faster is better, but there's not enough difference when you look at it scientifically. To even from the evidence, there's just not enough difference to warrant all these arguments. I think these vehement arguments, and for, as I call it, bullet religion, for people to get so crazy about how the 45 ACP is the shrine. And I like the 45 ACP a lot, but I mean, and I wish it were true in a way, because I could easily carry 45. All of us could carry 45. We carry whatever we want to. But the reality always comes back. There's just not that much difference,
Not quite enough. I think it depends on, if I was carrying a gun, it didn't matter how big it was, just, on my belt, I would probably carry a 45, probably the Glock 21, because I do think that the 45 being big and slow makes enough difference to where if there's really no sacrifice I have to make with the gun size, I'd rather have a 45.
It's kind of a why not. I mean, that's what I have beside my bed. I've got a Glock 41, and I put extensions on the magazine. those we got from who's that company? But anyway,
So what's it give you? 15?
They hold 4 extras.
Wow, 4.
And I'm still loading it down one, but I have 16 rounds, like in the gun, the Glock 41. It's got night sights. I love that gun, and it's subsonic.
Yeah,
for shooting in house.
That's
Whatever.
another advantage of it. And one thing too about 45 is it's actually a lot easier to shoot 45 than 40. That's what's cool about it to me. I think.
Yeah, I agree. The impulse. I've shot both
It's-
extensively, and the impulse recoil is a little
It
better.
seems smoother to me. That's why.
Just a push.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a 40 guy, because I'm like, I either want, I can carry more of them and they're easier to shoot, or if I'm going to carry any less of anything, I'm going to go with something with 45, because 45 and 9 are both easy and comfortable to shoot.
Yeah,
40 for me is. I can shoot it fine. It's just, I can't shoot it as well as I could a 9 or a 45, and I don't see that there's enough of an advantage with a 40 to justify like losing some of that. But
I disagree with everything both of you said the last 2 minutes. I'm just kidding. I just want to see your reaction.
oh, okay.
Well, you can tell we don't care.
Well, I was going to say, John,
Just kinda
Really
like,
bothered
okay.
us.
I should have said at the very beginning of all this, John took a chance on getting all 3 of us in the room at the same
Yeah,
time
I know it.
That's
yeah.
true.
for a discussion like this,
Three
because you are
half-wits in one room.
you are going to set a new standard for sarcasm
That's true.
with this episode. And we should have said that at the beginning, because that's a
Well,
fact.
we were trying to be serious. I was just sitting here thinking as we're having this discussion, we're pretty serious discussion here for about whatever it's been.
Yeah, it really has been.
Plus, we're talking about something. We don't. John and I and you, none of us dwells on shooting bullets into people's bodies and all that kind of thing. Because mainly, I think we all just love shooting.
Yeah.
And the self defense aspect is kind of a side. It's a side benefit of being a shooter and enjoying firearms. Because we all believe in Second Amendment and protecting ourselves.
Yeah, because I don't worry about too much. Some people, like lately, because there's been so many, training personalities out there that really make people feel like you have to train if you have a gun. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, if you have a gun, wait a minute, you have a gun, you haven't been to my training course. Yeah. Go ahead and leave America. You know what I mean? And the thing is, like I tell people sometimes, like, obviously being trained is better than not being trained. But also, on the flip side, if all you're doing is training, then, okay, what are you training for? You know what I mean? It's like, what do you have left to live?
About living, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, live your life. Like I talk about this a lot, how I carry guns because I want to have options if someone presents me with a lethal threat, but I don't sit around and worry about it. You know what I mean? It's like, I just live my life. If I get killed, I get killed. It's like, I'm not going to sit around and worry about it. I'm not going to ruin the life that I do have worrying about losing.
For
it.
some people, they're giving them the benefit of the doubt too. They just thoroughly enjoy that. There are people who go from one training school to the next, and that's kind of their hobby.
Yeah, and see, that I think is
Where
great.
I'd rather shoot 2 liters. That's my hobby.
Right, and I think that's great. Like, people who enjoy, really enjoy the prepping stuff, and I actually like some of the prepping stuff. People who really enjoy that, really enjoy the training, because then they are living their life and they're enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
What I hate to see is new shooters and people who I see it on a lot of people, and they have been made to feel like they have to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have, especially a lot of new people, they have this sense. Well, like, for example, I don't know if you've noticed this a lot lately. There's a way to hold an AR-15 that's really caught on big time, and you see a lot of young people doing it.
Were you putting your weak hand down all the way down to the end of the muzzle?
I think the 3-gun shooters do that. Started that.
Yeah. So
competitors.
Right. I mean, how you want to hold?
I'm a 100-gun shooter, but I mean, 3-gun competitors.
Yeah. However you want to hold your gun is anyone's business. But like that, for example, is a lot more popular than it should be if people were being genuine. You know what I mean? Like, the thing that does is all you got to do is move your hand from here to here, and all of a sudden, in everyone else's eyes, you are a more experienced shooter. And people jump on that. They take every opportunity. You see it with lingo also. People like to use all the new lingo. I run this, I run that, I do this, blah, blah, blah. I don't even know all of it because I don't care. Yeah. And so you throw in some lingo, you got the different hole in the AR, all of a sudden you're a hotshot guy. You went to one training class. You're a hotshot guy, and a lot of new people in the gun industry are made to feel like they have to do that, and that's fine, except that the bad thing is it turns off people. It makes people go, oh man, well, I don't really know if I can do that. So, okay. And then just kind of drift away from being into guns.
Well, here's a question. Would you both agree or disagree that this industry, the firearms industry, training industry, self-defense industry, whatever you want to call it, would you say that to a high degree it is lingo-driven, appearance-driven, that type of thing, versus actual results and outcomes?
I would say not everybody, not every trainer is like that, but a lot of it, yes.
And any air endeavor gets to be that way with stock car racing and all that.
Right, that's true.
We guys are bad about
That's true.
When I was doing a lot of competition, you saw that, everybody souping up their guns, doing stuff they didn't really need to do, thinking this would make them a much better shooter, and it didn't really help. They needed to just burn a lot of rounds, is what they needed to do.
It's like overly gear concerned. Like it'd be like a guy, like if you're decided that you want to be a musician, you want to be in a band, so you go out and buy the best guitar and the best amp, when really you should have just practiced your ass off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, take some lessons, and exactly right. The guy, you and I were talking about this recently when I was playing the IPSC game, USPSA. So many guys you see, not everybody, but you see people get into it, and they come decked out with shirts and patches and all this stuff, and there's a certain uniform, that they would, like they were sponsored or something. They were not sponsored. They just wanted to look professional, look like Rob Leatham. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's part of the game, but still, we guys are just bad about that.
Yeah.
Well,
we don't focus on the fundamentals as much as that's.
We're all concerned, it seems, that we're concerned about driving adrenaline and being geared up and wired and everything else. And you talk about the appearance part. Reminds me of my first concealed carry class. I had to take more than one because I sucked and I failed.
You failed the concealed
No, I'm
carry
just
class?
kidding.
Oh.
I mean, see, he actually,
I thought I was getting an
that.
admission.
He actually, for once,
I sorted. Hey, let me interrupt you for a second. I talked with a guy. I won't mention his name. Good guy, smart guy, really smart guy. And we were getting CDLs because we would need to drive a bus occasionally. And he would joke about going to take the test to get your CDL. I'll study the day before and go get it. And the rest of us were kind of concerned about it because there's a lot of stuff you had to know to get a CDL driver's license. But sure enough, he goes and fails it, and it was kind of like that. And I was like shocked that he failed it, but he actually did. And so I thought, well, okay.
I think
you're a smart guy. You could fail something.
I think if you fail the handgun carry permit course, you shouldn't even be allowed to take it again.
You shouldn't be able to walk into a gun shop, right?
Yeah.
No, but the first class, I've had a basic class and I've had some advanced classes, maybe 3, 4 at the most. And this was several years ago. It was with a local police agency who at the time was conducting the class. So there were, oh my gosh, I think there were 20 people in the class, and there were probably 6 or 7 officers on hand, all obviously carrying. And there was, you're talking about the appearance, there was one person who showed up. And I've been training my rear end off for this. And I felt really good about what I was doing, both from the actual written test part, which I aced, it was 100, and my shooting score, which was 100. Okay, so I was just kidding. But there was some guy who showed up, and he was wearing mall ninja gear. He was a mall ninja. He had on the all black, very tactical. I'm thinking, is he with the law enforcement agency that's carrying out the class, or was he, a customer for these folks? He was actually there to get his permit. He talked trash. He did everything thinking, man, this really isn't how you want to act with law enforcement present on their range. And they're the ones that are going to decide whether or not you make the first step in acquiring this handgun carry permit. This was in Tennessee, obviously. So this guy showed up. He gets out there, and he had a 1911 something. I don't know what brand it was. He fired his first shot on the line, and his gun jammed. And we started out at about 6 feet, I guess. 3 feet.
It must not have been
feet.
in 1911. Those don't jam.
No, well, there you go. See, because 45 is the best caliber in the world, right?
Yeah, so you must be mistaken.
Okay,
Yeah.
so more sarcasm. But his gun jammed, and it turned out that he had loaded 40 caliber ammo into a 45 handgun.
Nice.
So the case ruptured and jammed.
Wow.
And I mean, he had a KB, had a kaboom.
Wonderful.
Because he was such an idiot that he loaded the wrong ammo in his gun. And then he told everybody after the fact, well, I've never shot this gun before. So it's like, that's amazing to me. So you talk about training.
But he was dressed well, right?
Yeah, he was well dressed. He looked good. He talked, he had the talk, he had the lingo and everything, but he got on the line, he wasn't worth a crap. And then to make a mistake like that where he could have hurt himself. He didn't get hurt, by the way. But he blew up the gun, which he said he had borrowed from somebody. It's like, great. Now he's got to go back to his friend. Hey, I blew up your gun. You know, how do you explain that?
Yeah.
I've never understood that mentality. It's like all these people who do that and dress up and act like they're Rob Leatham or whatever. You know, I just, if I'm doing some endeavor, involved in some endeavor, I've not really done that much of it, or even if I have. But if I'm kind of new to an area, I like to sort of keep my mouth shut and see how it goes and kind of sneak in under the radar. And I remember my first competition was down in Murfreesboro with a 45, and I just had it in the trunk. I didn't think I was even going to shoot. I just was going to go watch. And I got down there, and it looked like there were some other people that maybe just regular folks, and they said, "You going to shoot?" You know, well, I got my gun, but I just want to watch. No, go get it. You know, you'll find it. It doesn't matter. They talked me into doing it, you know. But I mean, you know, I was really nervous. And I've been shooting quite a lot on my range, and actually ended up coming in like 15th or something out of 50 people. But I didn't feel like I was probably very good at all, and I was going to just probably embarrass myself. And I would have liked to hid. You know, being 6'8", it's hard to hide, but. You know, just to go in there and act big and dress like you're Rob Leatham or something, I just don't get that mentality.
It's like...
You put extra pressure on yourself, for one thing.
Well, it's man culture working against us, basically, is what it is. It's
like, you're right. I agree.
Yeah, us as men, we watch, you know, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all them on TV, and we think, okay, this is what a man does. So we've got to portray ourselves.
I saw Rob Leatham dress like this, and he's a really great shooter. Right. So if I dress like him, I guess I'll be good.
And also like, you know, we tend to be lazy, right? So we want something, and then we look at, okay, well, what's the easiest way I can do that? So you want to fit in. You want to be a shooter. You want to be a tactical guy. You want to be this guy. What's the easiest way to do that? Spend hours and hours training or learning the skill? Or I could go and buy the clothes. There we go.
And a $3,000 AR.
Yeah, that's exactly. Right. Look up online, learn a few good words. There you go. All of a sudden, you're one of them, you know.
That's right.
You know, if I can make hits, which I can, at 200 yards with an EOTech, no magnification. I've never taken it further than that, which is why I can't say I've done it at 400. But if I can take what is basically a cheap rack-grade AR, which is what I have, with the 16-inch barrel, or one of them that I have, with an EOTech, no magnification, and constantly print 2-inch groups with mil-spec ammo, why do I need a $4,000 AR?
There you go.
Well, it's like these, you know, 1911s people get all excited about, you know, the ones that like, oh, there's no rattle. Like, you know, it's so tight, you can't even hardly pull the slide back.
Yeah.
Alvin York, look what he did with that. I guarantee you that thing was a jalopy.
That was no
mess.
Ed Brown he used, was it?
Yeah.
I
bet you could play that thing like a maraca. It probably, you know, rattled so bad.
Well, I think we ought to do a video on that sometime. We could probably call it accuracy. You know, just shoot some junk guns and show. Well, I mean, we actually, you all have seen that video. We did that, but I mean, we didn't intentionally take junk guns and do it, but it's just kind of our little attempt to show that it's the shooter more than anything.
You know, it's easy to get carried away on gear, though, because
it's guys, like you say, guys are just that way.
Well, and gear
it's the same in any endeavor. It's shooting or cars. You know, people are the same.
It's your mindset more so than what you do, because we all like collecting gear and stuff. Like, for example, all right, take two different examples. Take a guy who's got closets full of tactical gear, right? But he doesn't actually go out and wear it to the range or anything. He just buys it because he likes it. Or
might need it someday, you know.
Yeah, just because it's cool to collect. Or then the guy who's like, he's always got to wear it and make you think that he's like an ex-Navy SEAL because he takes pride in that, like, hey, people think I might be a veteran, you know, or something crazy
like that. You just
like
something. You know, I bought a large Bowie knife recently. I don't have any use for it, really, other than hacking limbs. I mean, John knows it's
tree limbs,
11-inch blade, and it's a 3/8-inch thick blade. I mean, it's just this humongous thing. It's just cool, you know.
I mean, So I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not that, you know, I'm saying people who collect gear are somehow trying to be something they're not. I mean, that stuff is awesome.
Now,
it's
if they're wearing it to Walmart every day, then
exactly. You know, like the mall ninja thing. That is a great term. Whoever came up with
I
that.
know.
Oh yeah, that's what this guy was, and this was back before the term mall ninja was probably invented.
He helped start it.
Yeah.
I hope he's not one of your followers, because he'll know.
He probably is.
He'll know I'm talking about it.
We have
Yeah.
a variety of followers. We even have criminals. We had we show you that email I messaged
yeah.
I got on Facebook that time from
About the law enforcement that
the
did a
guy
raid
did a drug bust and
Right.
And they were
project.
watching
They were
Hickok
watching
45
They were watching
videos.
our videos.
to learn how to use the firearms they had stolen. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, they had some stolen firearms or something.
Yeah.
So you can't control who watches
Yeah.
anything.
You know, which is funny, it reminds me, like, you know, we actually, you know, the TN Outdoors 9 channel and the Hickok45 channel, we actually go back to the very, very, very early days, you know, of guns on YouTube. And what's interesting, this is something that I've really been noticing lately, is that now a lot of the gun channels you see actually have like what I would call intentional names. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It'll be called something like, I guarantee you I could probably just make up something in my head and it would already be one because there's so many now.
Something tactical, this.
Yeah, or the something that, yeah. So, but it's funny, you go back, that's one reason that's one way you can tell the old gun channels versus the new ones is they have names like TN Outdoors 9 or Hickok 45 or Iraq veteran 8888888888,
Yeah.
you know, or like
It's just something that someone just sort of randomly, like me, when I was looking for a new login that I've been using before that.
like Such 00,
Yeah.
nothing fancy. Like some of the old guys who've been around for a long time. It's like it just sounds like your typical you know email username.
It was a password you used for something at some point.
That's
I mean,
right.
you're
That
using-
you'd already been using. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because everyone's had those email addresses where it's like Jim Bob 4285. You know, and those are you
right.
still see some of those channels around.
It's kind of hard to market yourself with a name like that.
It is. Yeah.
Yours especially.
Oh,
At least
yeah.
I was fortunate enough I was using a great gunfighter's name, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 Outdoors 9.
Yours really clicks. Mine is just it's lethargic.
It's easy to remember though.
Yeah,
That's the main
the
thing.
reason my name came out of this was back in the days before, as we were trying to upgrade our concealed carry laws here in Tennessee, and for example, trying to get carry at a grocery store where alcohol was sold, and then that passed, and then we get to where you can carry in a restaurant where alcohol is sold, and then the next level was
What about can we still carry where alcohol is talked about, or are we still working on that?
we're in Tennessee. No.
Okay.
Moonshines. Right? Yeah, we need to get to where you can carry when you want to get drunk, you know, don't you think?
What about around
That
people?
was sarcastic.
What about not like while people are drinking, but what about people like who do drink?
Man,
Can
we're
you
going to get some people in trouble.
Yeah, I know. Really.
Can you
They're going
carry?
to be confused saying, are they being sarcastic?
Yeah, really. Well, we still get comments on a video or two where I had a little a Coke, a caffeine-free Diet Coke inside a cozy, you know, like on a shooting table. Probably one or two videos out of all we've done. And enjoying beer while you're shooting, Hickok, and they're not kidding. They think,
they're not.
They think it's a beer
Oh.
because it had kind of a goldish can, I think.
That reminds me. I got a question for you. I'm curious to hear what you think about this. What do you think, in your honest opinion, about and this is not a joke, by the way. What do you think about like the whole thing where felons can't buy guns? Like, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's a good thing that felons can't buy guns once they get out of prison, or what do you think?
I have to weigh this between someone's constitutional rights, the law, and common sense. And we all know that all those three things at times don't seem to work, especially when you throw the law in there.
Right.
The Constitution, yeah. What I had to qualify this by saying when you look at how many felons are convicted, serve some time, maybe no time, and then they're back on the street.
Yeah, and you also have
And they're getting
nonviolent felonies. You know.
I mean, you can be definitive and say felons are not, once you're convicted once or twice, then what crime, to what degree or whatnot.
Yeah.
Then you could say they should not be allowed to have guns. But how in the world are you going to prevent that from happening?
Yeah.
I mean, they are rarely you get me off on a tangent. They are rarely prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You've got the revolving door of the criminal justice system. That is not the fault of the officers on the street who are getting the job done. with their intuition, their skills, the technology they have. They take all those resources at their disposal, and they're getting these people in like quickly the next day or whenever. And you're talking about finding a needle in a haystack. Then they get into the criminal justice system, and it's kind of like universal background checks. That's never going to work because we don't prosecute. The government just doesn't do a good job of keeping records. There's no continuity from one state to another.
Plus, we don't want them keeping records.
Well, I know that's just it.
I mean, they have to have
why would they want to?
registration.
I don't want them keeping extra records on me for obviously no reason. They cannot manage themselves. They cannot manage their data. So I'll circle back around to your question, and obviously, I would like to see that these felons are, lose their right to have a gun. That gets into a constitutional argument. But again, it doesn't matter which way it goes. We cannot stop them from getting guns.
Right.
And the thing is, when we do find them with some, we don't incarcerate them to the full extent of the sentence. Well, it's a revolving door.
Right. Well, then it depends on what they did too. If there's a really viciously violent thing that the person did, then maybe I could see it. But if they wrote some bad checks or something, I'm not sure how that's.
My thing has always been that I feel like this point of view is pretty consistent with the gun rights point of view. If someone is so dangerous that we are saying this person is not capable of the responsibility of having a gun, then they probably need to be in jail or under some type of supervision. So if someone has been deemed safe to be out in society to roam around, then it seems kind of almost unrealistic to say to that person, you can't have a gun, because if you say that that's realistic, then you say it's realistic to ban guns and make the world safer, because how can you assume to stop them from having guns?
You can't.
That's one way I look at it. So I feel like we probably kind of agree on that, because you're saying felons should be actually prosecuted, which I agree. If someone has committed a violent act, okay, if they're a violent person, okay, then let's put them in jail, But if they're not, let's let them get out. Let them have a gun. That's the way I look at it.
All you have to do is go look at the website for the Metro Nashville Police Department and look at the media release section. And it's updated pretty much every day, and it's set up by month and by year. You can go in there, and it shows, the photograph of someone and their mug shots. And 9 times out of 10, when someone has been caught and they're going to be lined up for prosecution, they get into that cycle for committing that crime. The court system, innocent till proven guilty, all that. 9 times out of 10, when you're reading the little bio that the police department puts in there, they have a track record already, and it's amazing. And that in so many cases where someone, for a violent crime, murder, assault, or whatever, that they are on parole or they're awaiting sentencing for a crime. They were convicted, and they're awaiting sentencing and then incarceration. Why in the crap are they still out running the streets and committing more crimes? And it's amazing. I look at that site enough, you start recognizing people, not people I hang out with. I don't mean it that way. I mean that you start seeing the same people over and over and over again, and then the anti-gun folks, and I don't know if you want to go down that path, use that type of data. They say, well, we have gun crime. Hey, I don't like gun crime just as much as anyone else, but the anti-gun folks need to look at, why do we have gun crime? Who is committing the gun crime? Why are we not stopping it? Because
it's gang violence.
Comes back. It's all gang. You look at Chicago. I mean, my gosh.
Yeah,
I was going to make a video on that. I had specific notes and a setup for a video 2 years ago after Sandy Hook, when they were talking about that was going to be the catalyst for taking our guns away and our rights. And I had a video with all kinds of data, and it's out there on the internet.
Yeah.
And they say, no, we need to allocate funds to the CDC to research gun violence. No, you don't. All the info is out there, coincidentally, through government-provided resources. All I had to do was go to the State of Illinois page, City of Chicago page. I'm getting all these stats about the number of people who had entered the criminal justice system, coming back to your question a moment ago about whether or not they should have gun rights. And you see the same people, same numbers, and yet it's that minority that's not being addressed, and they want to come after the three of us and everybody like-minded folks.
And they never
such as
want
us.
to, and they never want to talk about, the real reason why there is gun violence in the streets and where most of it comes from.
Right.
Here in our society, we have, whether you agree with it or not, we have created a system where certain substances that are very small have, because of the way that they are treated legally, have been given the value of gold. And I'm speaking about especially like crack and meth, literally worth their weight in gold, right? And so you have these areas where people don't have good opportunities because of bad parenting or whatever it is, right? But there's just, all they have to do. Okay, think about this, right? You grew up in, a really bad area. You don't have a lot of opportunities. Your parents weren't there, not much education. And, if you really just bust your, the best chance you might find a decent job somewhere, working at McDonald's or something like that, and you might be able to square out a little bit of a living for yourself. Or all you have to do is talk to, Joe Kingpin down the road, and he'll set you up with this stuff that's worth its weight in gold. And you can just sell it, and all of a sudden now you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and and you have a trade that has to be enforced by violence, basically. So you need guns, and you need to kill people to control that, to keep making those thousands and thousands of dollars. And nobody ever talks about that. Whether you think drugs should be legal or not, that is the reason that so many people are being killed by guns on the streets, is because there's a huge black market trade in this country, and it's mostly drugs. It's not gambling and all these other things. It's mostly drugs, and that's why people are getting killed in the streets all the time. So when you look at these stats that the anti-gunners throw up in our face, really what you're looking at is you're looking at suicides and black market trade violence. That's it. That's basically what you're looking at.
I agree. There's a misplaced value system that is perpetuated by those who are, in all their ideology, of those who are trying to restrict gun rights. You talk about, how many people have lost their life over a pair of tennis shoes that were branded by "put your athlete's name here."
Yeah.
So when kids are paying $200, $300 for a pair of tennis shoes because XYZ's name is on it, and then the value system and the different issues you're talking about, where someone's going to use a gun or a knife or their hands. Hands and fist is a category that the FBI tracks, and there's more people killed in this country by hands and fist than guns.
Yeah.
Well, that's why.
So why don't we outlaw hands and fist?
Yeah, violence is violence, right?
But people being killed over tennis shoes and all these other drugs and all that, but it's misplaced values.
Well, it's a misnomer, really, like gun deaths and gun violence, and we end up using those terms ourselves because we hear them so much, and there's really no such thing as gun violence. It's just violence. It's people motivated to kill somebody for some reason because of the drug trade or whatever it is, with a hammer or with a baseball bat. Guns don't assault people. There's no gun violence. It's from that person holding, as we all know, But they've been very effective in getting those terms into our heads. And if you control the language, you can control the argument. And people who don't study it, and that's the thing we forget because we're so involved in it, that there's so many people that are kind of on the fence, even though the landscape has changed dramatically and firearms have become mainstream. It's date night now, to go out and shoot and all that kind of thing. Which is a wonderful thing. There's still a lot of the uninitiated folks out there who just sort of, I don't know, but I might get a gun sometime. I'm not sure. They're just watching the news and hearing the jargon and everything, and so they're easily influenced, by all that terminology, and they don't think that much about it as much as we do, in depth as John and you and I do.
Yeah, and they lack exposure. Is another thing I like to talk about is the reason that they don't try to ban alcohol is because everyone has both negative and positive exposure to alcohol because it's so widespread. Everybody knows someone who knows of someone who has had problems with alcohol, maybe killed themselves or gotten involved in drunk driving accident or something like that. But then we also know lots of people who have had positive experiences. Well, when it comes to guns, we know a lot of positive experiences because we're around people who use guns a lot. But
it's almost all positive.
Exactly, almost all positive. But if you're not around people who have guns at all, then your only experiences with guns are going to come from the news. And why are guns on the news usually? because it's something negative happened. It's almost never like, hey, come on down to Bill's Guns, we got a sale. You know, it's always, or hey, look, you know, Joe's out there shooting in his backyard and nothing happened. No, there's no news stories on that. It's always someone getting killed.
It's those guns being violent again.
Right, exactly. And then of course when the cops do something, you know, positive with their guns, they don't think of that as like, oh look, okay, there's a good side to guns. They just say, oh, thank God cops were there. You know, so there's no positive exposure, you know, and if you've never had the positive exposure on whatever it is, doesn't matter what issue it is. If you've only had exposure to one aspect of it, you're not going to be seeing it right. There's just not. There's no way.
And that's the beauty of it becoming more mainstream, because, you know, that's that exponential effect where well, in certain parts of the country, maybe not, but, you know, in the Midwest, in most parts of the country, most families have somebody in the family, just like my family had me, but they've got somebody who's into firearms now. And they know, just like your family, you got relatives, cousins and uncles and nieces and nephews that maybe they don't know anything about firearms, but they know Uncle Tommy's got a lot of guns. He's always shooting. And he doesn't seem too weird, you know, he doesn't seem too dangerous, you know, and that's what it takes. Whereas, you know, 20 years ago, you had way fewer families that really had somebody in the family or two somebodies who had a carry permit. And, you know, now you just know it. We can't relate to it because in our family, you know, that's always been a big deal. But
the internet, though, has played a huge role in that.
And the internet, you know, has helped that too. I mean, there's just so many people that have firearms and they're just regular people. And you can't hide that. It's like I was listening to Bill Frady this morning, and he was talking about how there are no anti-gun groups anymore because they know that guns are too mainstream and no one's really buying it. Not enough people are buying it.
They shadow themselves.
Now they're shadows, now they're safety groups and that kind of thing because there's just no market for them.
But you notice that they never actually talk about gun safety. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. You know, it's
well, their idea of gun safety is you don't have any and then we're safer.
Exactly. Like Moms Demand Action and Gun Sense or whatever.
Oh, wow. That Moms Demand Action thing.
You know,
get me on that.
That actually, you know, so a friend of mine actually brought up a good point about Moms Demand Action. When I first brought it to his attention, he thought I was about to tell him about a porn site to check out.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that after we wrap this up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll hear more about that. But something you said about terminology is spot on. And it's all about the terminology and all about the perception that the media and everyone else is giving about gun owners. So I think we come up with two phrases tonight we should do away with. One is knockdown power. The other is gun violence, because it's not a violent gun. I would bet a lot of money that right now, I hope I'm not wrong, all three of us are carrying a firearm that's loaded and has a round in the chamber.
Oh, yes.
In this room, and nothing has happened. You'll never hear anything about that. When the good guy stops a bad guy legally with, you know, somebody who's a threat. You remember the scenario with that church in Denver, I believe, several years ago, where there was a female guard. She was a church member, and their congregation actually had members they knew carried guns. I don't know if they were paid or not. That doesn't matter. It's just that the congregation, the leaders knew that there were several folks there who served as armed security, and nobody had a problem with it. And one of those folks stopped a threat. He had already killed some people, and he got in the building, and she stopped it.
Yes.
So,
well, just like in Garland, Texas, last week or week before, and those terrorists, whatever, they were going to attack, go in and shoot up all those people having that meeting, cartoonists or whoever they were, and he was a local police officer, I believe, and was helping with the security there. You know, by shooting those two culprits, then that saves so many lives. So we need a new term. What would be the antithesis of gun violence? How about gun kindness? So
gun kindness.
That was an act of kindness. He saved a lot of lives.
Gun kindness stops people violence.
Yeah.
Because it's the person, and that's not the message. That's not the message that's getting out.
I know.
Yeah, and I don't understand why gun violence should be more important than knife violence or all these other different.
Yeah, you don't ever
types of
hear that
violence.
phrase. Why don't we hear that phrase? Because people are killed with knives.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard that.
I mean,
gun violence,
there's folks that
knife
lose their
violence.
lives in a home swimming pool accident, and this is not a joke.
Oh, I
That
know.
the big screen TVs that fall over on
Yeah, I've
kids.
heard of that.
There was an article I ran across several, and again, this was after Sandy Hook, and I was trying to find anything I could to support what we believe in, and I found several articles that, I mean, was it made up? The number of folks who are kids that are injured or die every year because their 65-inch or 72-inch flat screen TV falls over on them. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
But you never hear about those types of
Yeah.
things.
No.
The media says that's trivial. It's like, well, it might be, but someone lost their life, and here's why. But
The
they want
media-
to regulate things that really aren't wrong.
The media controls reality. That's the thing. The media, perception is reality, and the media controls that. Like an example I like to use is there was this period about a couple of years ago where it was all over the news, these mass deaths of a bunch of like fish and birds. People were starting to get a little concerned about it. They'd have these images on the news of like just a ton of fish just dead, tons of them.
Yeah.
They're like birds, same thing. Well, the scientist came on. He's like, this happens like every year. Like this is actually fairly common. Like this
Right.
is just a phenomenon that happens. There's several different reasons for it.
But the news people
And
sort
then-
of
right.
keyed in on that.
Exactly.
For a period of time.
So like there's tons of examples of mass bird deaths out there, floating out there right now. They're out there. There's something like that happening right now. It's a common thing. All it takes is for the news to point its cameras in its direction, and all of a sudden it captivates the nation, and now it is a big
does.
issue. So the news has power because they don't have to make up stuff. All they have to do is just point people in the direction of what they want them to see.
Well,
And it's all a distraction.
It is.
Now, the bird. I heard about the bird and fish thing. Now, wasn't the bird issue connected with all your missed shots at the 230-yard gong?
I think it was.
That's true. I didn't want to go there, but
Yeah,
really.
I
think
don't
it
blame
was.
you.
At least in Tennessee, it was. Well, before 9/11, I recall well because I was teaching at the time, and I was doing silly things as usual, but there were a lot of shark attacks, and I don't know, it was like 1999, 2000, 2001. Along through that period of time, there just seemed to be. There was some dramatic shark attack somewhere, and then, of course, the media focused in on that. And then there was another one, and then the next season when it was most likely to happen,
There
they
wasn't
were
necessarily
looking
more.
for them. They were
Right.
looking for them, and I remember some people with some common sense, scientists or whoever, being interviewed and say, well, really, there's no more than there were last year or the year before. The numbers really haven't changed. It's just there's been a dramatic one here and there. And they were making it sound like the sharks were going to get all of us,
Yeah.
Right,
And
they're coming up the Tennessee River now. Did you
yeah,
know that?
really, yeah. But it was just before 9/11 because I remember I had a shark on my classroom door and some kind of clever caption I had about how I was going to eat all my students or something like that. And then 9/11 happened, and then I took. But anyway, it's just whatever they're focusing.
The news is like a big reality show in a lot of ways. It's in some ways the news is a joke. They take reality and then twist it in a way that's like a nice little fun way to not have to think about the real world and just focus on one little thing. Because
Well, and guns are always a great topic because they're a very powerful piece of metal, steel, polymer.
It scares
they can
people,
kill somebody immediately, and of course some people misuse them. So it's it's great fodder for the news cycle, and
it's easy. And one thing I try to talk about is, this is an experience I've had is anyone who knows a lot about one subject, and for us it would be guns. Anyone who knows a lot about one subject has the tools that they need to understand that they're being lied to on so many fronts about so many things. Because if you see a news story about something you know about, it's almost always wrong. Have you ever noticed that? Like if you see a news story, especially like let's say you see a news story that has something to do with like your job that you do. Most of the time it's wrong.
they're going to get about half of it wrong.
Yeah, like anytime I've seen a news story that has to do with guns or something like that, or something that I know about, it's almost always wrong. But yet we see a news story on something we don't know anything about, and we sit there and take it like, oh yeah, that's an interesting story. I didn't know that.
And that's how, and unfortunately, that's how people make decisions that impact their families, their finances, their careers, their political, things like that.
And like, well, another example too is even, you can even use that when you're shopping for cars. Like, I don't know anything about cars, but I know stuff about guns, and I know that when I go into gun shops, I hear people that sell guns saying just insanely, ridiculously wrong things.
Yeah.
So if I go to look at a car, I know 9 times out of 10 what they're telling me is probably garbage.
Only the names have changed, right? Whether you're shopping for computers or cars or guns or anything.
Exactly.
No, I don't even watch the news anymore. I mean, we're talking any channel, any network. I get all my news from the Hickok45 Facebook page.
You're smart.
There you go.
You're smart. You really
This
are.
show, right? This show.
That's
Everything
right.
you need to know is always within this show.
It's right here. It's on YouTube.
That's right.
No, I mean, I'm the same way. I get everything from the internet, because the cool thing about the internet is, while you have a lot of the same BS, at least there's lots of it. You know what I'm saying? So, like, this is what I always tell people. I was like, there's a lot more noise on the internet, but at least if somebody has some truth, there's nothing to stop them from getting it out there. And also, when you read an article, it's so much different from hearing when being told something by a reporter. Because sometimes when you watch the news, watch a reporter and don't think about what they're saying. Don't even, just ignore what they're saying and only watch their face. And you really start to pick up on how hard they try to like manipulate you into feeling a certain way about what they're telling you. And the nice thing about the internet is you just read an article and you just take it for what it is. You don't get as much of that.
They're trying to sell you something. You can tell by their voice.
Exactly.
It's based on emotion.
And their expression,
Yeah, it's funny. That's something that I notice a lot, and I notice it in all the media, and some of it's understandable. But I listen to sports talk and and everything else, and I prefer people who are just sitting there, kind of talking in normal voice, like we're doing. I think we may talk a little louder because we know we're
thought you
on
raised
air.
your voice.
I'm screaming at you.
Well, normally, actually,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't. Okay, we'll break it on this show. That actually is from England, and he has a British accent, and this is just a character.
That's right. but I just prefer, go ahead and just tell me what the news is or whatever it is, what you think it is in a normal voice, because maybe it's because I've been a student of the language for so long, but it's so obvious when somebody is trying to sell you something and they're putting on all this unbelievable inflection. Just think about some of the gold commercials you see, or just whatever, a used car salesman. And it's funny because I remember John. Of course, John's always been a skeptic, when you were young, you used to ask me, why preachers talk like that? You were like 2,
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's just they go to seminary or school and they learn to talk like that, because it influences people more or whatever. Because it just always struck him as really weird, And it's funny because out of the mouths of babes, what you were seeing early on was, most people around you were kind of talking in normal voice, except when you turn the TV on, of course, or a preacher or anybody that's selling anything.
A reporter, especially.
Yeah, a reporter, someone who is something they want you to buy. And I don't know. I just think we overdo that. It's 2015.
Yeah.
Just talk to me.
Yeah, just talk normal.
Talk to me.
Like, remember we were in Tombstone and we were walking down, down the road, and that guy was like, "Oh, get your tours here. We're gonna go down there." And blah, blah, blah.
Everybody's a carnival barker.
I remember being like, that to me just sounded like noise. If he had just been like, and the thing is, we were the only people like with really that much within earshot of him, and he just saw us coming, so he went into like that mode. And I remember thinking, I think I told you at the time, I was like, if he had just said, "Hey guys, how you doing? We got a thing going on over here. If you guys want to check it out, it's pretty cool," I would have been actually more likely to try it out. But the way he did it was it sounded like noise.
It was a disgrace to Wyatt Earp, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
But then again, we get the politicians we deserve in a lot of ways, and people are influenced by that.
Yeah.
If you went to whatever channel, looked at all the car commercials today, and you redid all of them and had someone coming on instead of, hey, and all the craziness and the balloons, and you just had somebody that had half a brain and said, hey, going down to the dealership, but we've got some pretty good buys. We got in fact, we're kind of overloaded right now. Yeah. We're kind of overstocked with F10 pickups or something, and you probably get a good buy on them, at least a better buy than you normally could. And just in a normal voice, use common sense. Our trucks have good ratings. That would appeal to me.
It would. But
unfortunately, a lot of people, I think, have to be all that.
Yeah, there's still a lot of people who still chase the flashing, shiny lights.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time before people start kind of, shaking their head and go, oh, okay, I didn't realize that that's what was happening. And the internet, I think, is going to bring more light to that every day. More and more people are kind of waking up and going, oh, okay, now I see what that is, And eventually, I think we'll start seeing a shift. Because first the people have to change. That's the thing. Before, like, people always complain about the government and the politicians, all these kind of things. Really, the problem is the people. It's not the people in power that's the problem. It's the people. Just like you said, we get the politicians that we deserve. Once people change and once people start to be more mindful about everything and start realizing, what's going on and start thinking about things, then at that time, maybe we could start getting some of these things changed, but there's just not enough people yet.
You said something a moment ago that is really sticking with me, and that is that John has always been a skeptic. And I'm thinking back when John was 5 or 6 years old, he walked up to you up at the house one day and said,
"Oh no, here we come. This sounds like a load of BS coming my way now. Get ready, John."
He said, "Dad, why is the 45 ACP?" He's 5 or 6, and he was 6 foot tall. And he said, "Dad, why is the 45 ACP the hammer of Thor?"
I remember that.
I'll never forget your response. We were eating pizza, and your response was, "Son, that's because John Moses Browning said it is."
That's right. Sounds like a believable story.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty convincing.
Well, it was kind of funny. When he was in pre-K and kindergarten,
I remember
those kinds of things.
I remember that one story. What was it?
The road sign one or
something at school?
Well, he would get on to the kids in his class that they would be playing video games. He didn't really play them much at all, but there was some of them really locked into that stuff, and they'd come to school and they'd be talking about, I won last night. I had a 46 Magnum or some kind of gun. What was the one you remember? The kid, I won't say names, but I remember his name. Yeah. But anyway, they played games, and you get in an argument with them, but not because you meant to, but he was stubborn too, and the kid would say, I shot a 17 Magnum, and I took everybody out. And John might just, there's no such thing as a 17 Magnum, And the kid would, and they'd get all upset at him.
There was something about the two of you were in public somewhere, and there was a law enforcement officer, and you
that's my best story.
You commented about his handgun or holster.
No, it wasn't.
It was a tour downtown.
Yeah. We were taking a class tour downtown. Is when I was.
You were like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I was still going to school where you were teaching.
Yeah,
and I remember I asked you what kind of gun he was carrying because I wasn't quite old enough to be able to just pick it out.
No, I wasn't with you. You asked him.
Oh, that's right. I asked him.
No, you recognized it. I think you asked him because you knew enough about guns and Glocks and everything, and you were looking at it and thought, well, it looks kind of like a Glock, and you asked him, and he said it was a Sigma.
Yeah,
and you knew enough. Because I had been bad-mouthing the Sigma.
Yeah. And I didn't say anything then, but we were supposed to, all of us were supposed to write like a letter to the guy thanking him, like
Park Ranger Bob.
Stuff you do when you're a kid, And like in my letter, I said that I was sorry that he had to carry that gun.
He said, "I'm sorry you had to carry a Sigma." He came on that. He told me the letter he wrote to him.
His mind was probably blown, a 5-year-old.
So all the other kids are writing, Ranger Bob, whatever his name was. He was the ranger downtown, the Bicentennial Park.
Thank you for showing us the tree.
Yeah, we enjoyed the park and all that. John, I'm sorry you have to carry a Sigma.
Your choice of handgun really sucks. Yeah. That's great.
The guy's probably still got that note. Some dumb little 5-year-old told me he was sorry I had to carry.
Well, it's funny. He might watch our videos now.
Yeah, exactly. Now he watches. He's like, I think I remember that kid.
I remember that kid. That had to just be perplexing to him because you really were. I mean, this wasn't one of those deals where you were 11 and we just remember it wrong. You were like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You were like pre-K, kindergarten or something.
I've heard that story.
The funny one though is whenever. Like you were sort of like busy or something. I was doing that classic annoying kid thing, asking 1,000 questions to their dad, And I asked you I asked you something about a gun. I was like, how many road? Oh yeah, what was that?
No,
I asked you how many road signs would it go through, and you just kind of were like, I don't know, 10 or something.
No, it was it was a 375 H&H Magnum we had, and we were in because that was an elephant gun, it was a big gun. So I was shooting some dead trees, and John was fast fascinated. So was I about he would go through a tree or something that big.
It had a lot of knockdown power.
Yeah,
didn't it?
quite. Or penetration,
down, yeah.
penetration power.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the subject, I think I might have had the 458 Win Mag at the same time. We were talking about all that. And so, we were riding down the road and John again, he was like, what, 5 or something. and he's looking and he said, Dad, we were talking about the gun, or he was, how many, you think I'll go through a sign? One of those road signs? I said, yeah, John, go through 30 of those. Right, go through 30 of those signs, I'm just answering his question. Yeah, I go through the sign, John. I go through 30 of them. So that was the end of that conversation. Well, he's on some field trip.
He didn't realize that I put that in my memory bank as concrete information. I was like, okay, got it. That specific gun will shoot through 10 road signs. Okay, stored that away as a fact.
Man, no wonder you're warped.
So he's in a whatever kindergarten or something. I think that might have been pre-K, where I taught at the time, and he was there. And so I kind of knew the teachers and assistant teachers over there in the lower school and all that. But so I was in a faculty meeting or something, I think at a brunch, and I think it was an assistant teacher, or maybe it was your main teacher, came up to me. He said, and we were talking about John. Said, yeah, we went on a field trip, and I sat by John on the van, and yeah, he's real talker, and yeah, he was telling me you had a gun that'll shoot through 30 road signs. And she's some little 23-year-old teacher fresh out of college, and she probably afraid of guns to begin with. And she got some little 5-year-old in her class telling her that my dad has a gun that'll shoot through 30 signs. And plus we have a professional relationship. She teaches or taught at the same place I did. So, oh my gosh, she thinks she has this vision of me now, going out and riding around the county shooting through road signs.
Yeah.
Just because of some piece of valuable information John shared with her.
Yeah.
But
well,
that's
I thought
funny.
she might be curious to know that.
Yeah, really. So he just has to, little young people do. They'll just pop out with stuff anyway. So and John always was that way. He just, just enlighten you with some information. My dad has a sign that'll shoot through 30 road signs. And I can just imagine what went through her head when you said that.
And I haven't changed much, I guess.
No, so now he's out shooting. Now we go out and shoot road signs together. See?
I was going to say, I've been waiting. You have over 1,000 videos. I've yet to see anything along that line.
I know.
I mean, there's an idea for Plinkster. How many road signs will a 22 go through?
We actually
Let's see if
thought
we can
about
get him
that.
thrown into jail.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I almost bought a road sign at an antique shop or some flea market. I forgot what it was. It was a stop sign, or it was a common sign. And they had actually several of them. And I told John, there's some targets down here. I might have picked one of these up, one of these signs. We could actually shoot it. I didn't rip it off a post or anything. But they only thought, no, I guess we better not do that. That would have encouraged shooting stop signs.
Yeah.
We do have our limits.
Yeah.
Well, what else are we going to talk about that's going to change the universe?
Yeah. No. Let's see.
Is it midnight yet?
I could tell you a few things that might change the universe, but we'll leave that for another show, I guess. But I guess we talked long enough. Been about an hour and a half. That's usually where I try to. That's usually where I try to keep the shows. I don't like try to make it like those long Joe Rogan style 3-hour podcasts or anything, because that really is quite demanding. Even people who like radio, I mean, geez, 30 hours is a long time to sit down and listen to something.
Well, it depends on how you have like.
I mean, if you're driving Nashville to Memphis, that would be welcome.
Well, I was going to say what I do.
But there's so many podcasts is a thing,
Right.
Yeah,
You're competing with that.
I try to remember if I've listened to someone on a podcast. But I say, I got to get out of the car. We're going to do something. I'll look at it and see where I was at 42 minutes, and I'll just try to make a mental note of that, and then I'll go back to it some other time.
I do that.
Or not get back to it, whatever.
I usually listen to them in the ones I'll listen to in like an hour block. Okay, I'll listen to an hour of this, and then I'll try to get back to it if it's interesting.
The ones I like, I don't really mind them being long.
Yeah.
If I like it, I want more, but it just depends on what they're talking about. Like I say, a lot of the podcasts they're like this one. They're just boring. No, a lot of them are, I don't know. They're just, that's right. We were talking about that off air, weren't we? And I like podcasts. I like talk radio, and I listen to a lot of different people when I get a chance. If I'm in the car, Bill Frady, Tom Gresham, and Gun Guys podcast. There's several I've listened to, Talking Lead, different ones. And then I'll hear people talk about another gun podcast, I'll try them out, and I'll go to them, and I don't mention names, but And I'll go and I just think, gosh, is this really a gun podcast? It sounds like 3 or 4 middle schoolers just yucking it up about stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, and I'm pretty tolerant. I like, if you're talking about guns at all, I'll put up with, you know, some stupid humor because my humor's kind of stupid, but. I don't know. It just they seem so inane. So many of them. I mean, if they just talk about firearms, guns,
or anything interesting. That's
anything interesting.
Like this show is kind of weird as a gun show because there may be some shows where you don't hear much about guns on some of them.
Well, you don't intend to be just a gun show. Right?
Yeah, I always look at it like it's a show about anything for people who like guns. So there'll be some shows that are mostly like this one's been mostly about guns.
Yeah.
And some shows that may not be as much about guns, but there'll be some talk about guns. And they know that, you know, there's gonna be a, you know, gun friendly element obviously to every show, understandably. You know.
Yeah,
but,
with us around.
yes, exactly. You know. So I don't know. I mean, but you're right. At least I try to I don't know. I try to at least try to talk about things that at least I feel like are somewhat interesting, or at least they're interesting to me. I mean, I don't know.
That's kind of I think they are interesting. I actually I listened to. Here I am patting you on the back, self-serving. But I listened to you and Derek, and I've listened. I think to everything you've done, and I mean it's kind of interesting to me. I don't think I'm that biased because I'm looking for podcasts where people are talking about firearms, things that are kind of interesting. And
well, like here's what'll turn me off of a podcast, and you get a lot of this, I think, in podcasting is small talk. My entire life, I've always hated small talk. Mm-hmm. It's always felt like such a waste. Like if I could, I'd be like at the grocery store and be like, "Hey, did you hear that I read this thing online about the pyramids actually being an ancient power plant?" I would just say stuff like that. Not like, "Hey, so how's the weather?" I hate that kind of talk. And you get like a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, sometimes on podcasts. So even when I don't talk about guns, I try to make it like it's about something, you know what I mean? It's like a real conversation about something.
Is that true?
What?
About the pyramids?
I think it is.
I don't know. Maybe it is.
Well, you wanted a relaxed, I think, atmosphere on the podcast.
Was it a joke or was it not? I don't know.
I know one thing. The way those of you that watched the video for this, there's part of this room that John's not going to show.
That's true. There's some posters in here that people won't see.
There's a poster right over there.
It's a pretty cool poster.
Your head, and
right.
I'm assuming that's Pink Floyd album covers.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just say that poster.
Okay, which one is your favorite album cover?
I'm just going to say that poster gives a whole new meaning to Dark Side of the Moon.
That's true. It does. Right. It does.
So now you can think about that.
I've asked a lot of people this. Okay, which one is your favorite album cover? It's a tricky question.
I could care less about the album cover.
Hey, you get what I'm saying, though.
Oh. I don't know.
It's a tough call, isn't it? Because only really 2 of them can you see very well.
I'm sorry, that's not what I'm looking at. But
anyways,
probably the one on. I like the one on the far left because I actually remember buying that album. Yeah, it's the one with the cow on it.
It's a tough call.
Was that a cow impression?
I don't know. I can't turn my head around to see it very well.
Yeah.
With all this
You
gear on.
know what's funny? That all of these shows, they always end up having a Southern goodbye in them. Every show I do, it's like, all right, I guess we talked long enough, and then it's like we still talk for another like 10 minutes.
That's the encore.
Yeah, which people not from the South that don't know what a Southern goodbye is, basically, it's when you say you're going to leave, but really you're not. You just say that because you know you might want to leave in the next hour or so.
Start you thinking about
yeah,
it.
you say, okay, yeah, I'm probably going to have to head out, and then you'll move like near the door and then talk for a while.
Right.
And then you'll say it again, and then you'll go out the door, and then you might talk like in the front yard for a while.
So how long's this Southern goodbye been going on?
Pretty long time.
About 45 minutes.
And then I think right now we're in the car stage, and we're still talking through the window. That's where it's at right now, I think.
The kids are in the back asleep. They're asleep.
Yeah. We haven't actually pulled off yet. So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll drive away.
Well, it's been pretty cool having 10 Outdoors 9 on because, again, like you're saying earlier, we all go back a long ways into the YouTube universe.
Yeah.
So
And beyond that, actually.
We are.
Oh yeah. We've known each other for 30 years.
We are gun YouTuber OGs.
Yeah, that's right. Old guys.
OGs.
OGs.
I don't know if I want to be in that category or not.
Yeah. I know it is funny. We need to do some videos on the history of YouTube. Occasionally we'll get a comment, about someone say, not all that long ago, some comment about us shooting 2 liters. You got that from somebody else. Like it was someone else.
Well, people say that
funny.
because FPS Russia is has a bigger channel than ours. People will say like, oh yeah, you're copying FPS Russia with the 2 liters. We were shooting 2 liters. Like you can actually look at the dates. We were shooting 2 liters like over a year before he even started that channel.
Well, that's what I don't go into all that, but I'll just say you might want to do a little studying up on your YouTube history.
You and I were shooting 1-gallon water jugs on your range in 1988.
Yes, yeah.
With Glazer safety slugs.
That's right. That's right.
That.
Learning a lot about ballistics.
And you've used like a Betamax or whatever camera you borrowed from Matthew Brady to.
That's right.
To film.
It was VHS. I never did get the Betamax. Yeah.
I've got, and I keep telling people this, but I've got footage of that. Got to get that to somebody, or I got to buy one of those programs.
We can do that now.
Let's do that.
You can do it at home.
Yeah,
I'll do that. I'll buy one of those programs. We'll get that done.
Yeah.
And
there's got to be something in there that would be interesting.
We need to like all get together one day and we'll just review all of it. And if you want any of it, you can have it, and we can put it on each other's channel and stuff.
That particular video, you did get that on video.
Right.
I was shooting that with I had a Smith & Wesson 686 stainless, 357 Magnum, and I was shooting that 1-gallon jug with Glazer safety slugs.
And you had just bought those. I don't think you had shot them yet.
No, I hadn't. They shot
low.
They shot low, but part of that could have been recoil control on my part.
Well, no, most of it was that really light, fast bullet. And I remember I warned you.
You told me I was going to shoot
because I had
low.
done some of that before with light, really fast bullets, and I knew they tend to print lower. And I think I mentioned it to you in the video. We'll look at it. I've seen it.
This is literally 1988. Yeah.
And I told this story in my radio show one time about how you shot like you were really low on the first one, and then the next one you got up a little bit, and I kept telling you, it's going low. Just move a little closer, because it was like at that time that was really expensive. They were like $1 or $2 a bullet.
Yeah,
they were around.
They come in those
finally hit it though.
Plastic packs. There'd be like 6 of them or something.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what it was.
That's kind of like the Glazers and the safety. The Glazers, and also the MagSafe. Yeah. You can't even find that stuff anymore. Now it's the RIP and all the Halo Point and all these other exotic ammo types now that are sold in boxes of 20 for $40.
Yeah.
I think
that's kind of the new era of.
I think I saw the Glazer safety slugs
I've seen them, but they're
somewhere. Not. Yeah, that really goes back.
I'm thinking Corbin used to make those. I'm not certain if they still have those, the rights to it, but they might still. But no, now it's the RIP, the Lehigh, the Halo Point. You got the Polycase ARX, which is the new go-to gimmick round. I said gimmick. I can't believe I said that.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a topic for a show sometime. There's the marketing. In the firearms industry.
I thought we were going to talk about that
we didn't
tonight.
get to it. We'll get that. We'll get to that. I'm sure. Yeah. You have to come back on again, definitely.
You could just focus on that. You could probably have a show in 17 minutes. Something along that line. But no, I think, that was on the board, actually, to talk about.
Yep.
Marketing of gimmick ammo, how people buy into that. And we got all these new people now that are buying handguns, getting their carry permits at record levels. And they're looking for information. Well, it's on the internet. You just have to dig around for it.
Yep.
And they're being bombarded with all this marketing.
Accessories and everything.
Yeah, accessories. Oh, my gosh. Can you just imagine the accessories?
People just have to be smart. They just people should know from cars and all the other things. Like you're saying, one area, you can extrapolate that to other areas and just realize, do you really think putting a spoiler on your trunk of your car is going to make you Mario Andretti, for example? Do you think really putting this rail on your AR or this thing here that you don't need? A lot of that's practical stuff, but something like that's going to make you win a 3-gun match just because you, I don't know. Some things do help, but others
It's just
don't.
crazy. The only accessory that really you would ever need is just one of those Glock knives to put on, that goes on the rail.
That's right. I've got one. Can't wait to show it off.
That's about the only thing you're going to want to put on a Glock.
Yeah, it's like 40 grain, advertising 40 grain, 9mm ammo at 2,000 feet per second, which I've shot some of that. I mean, 45, 50 grain 9 millimeter. You're talking about less than half of kind of the base weight of 115 grain. And it does get 1,900, 1,950 feet per second. But it's advertised as being, this is the end-all, end-all for self-defense. That thing's just going to fragment at about 2 inches, 3 inches, and that's it.
Yeah. Plus, you get weird blast, weird recoil, don't you?
Yeah, there's really no recoil. That's just it.
Point of impact.
You really don't, with something that light and that fast in a handgun, we're talking a Glock 19 4-inch barrel.
Yeah.
It's easier for me than shooting target ammo, full metal jacket.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, we talked earlier about you're shooting something that's pushing 2,000 foot-pounds of energy off your shoulder, and you don't feel that aspect of the physics. It's the target that gets the full impulse of that.
Yeah.
It's like shooting this light for caliber, high velocity ammo.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, you're not even getting absolutely no muzzle rise. You should be able to print 5 of those at 25 yards into a 1-inch group.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of that stuff.
I
think whatever weight bullet you shoot the most, that you practice with, you go plink with, I think you're better off if you stick with something in that category. So are we going over time here, John?
Yeah, we're going over time.
So we're still talking, and the car's out of the driveway.
Yeah, we're driving away, and we called each other.
Now our relatives are throwing fruit at us to get us out of the yard.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we will do this exact show again sometime before too long, and appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it. Enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You don't appreciate me?
I was looking at you when I said that.
I was giving John a hard time.
Well, you just happened to be here, and I figured it'd be awkward if I don't ask you to be on the show.
Right.
So
hang out in the backyard playing with the dog.
Yeah, so it's like, okay. All right. We'll see you guys later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.